and welcome back to another episode of the MindSets podcast. Today, I'm joined again by Charles for another interesting discussion about interesting things in fitness where we probably get told off afterwards for what we say. But nonetheless, we're going to provide some value. We're going to discuss some things that maybe you'll learn from, and we're going to have a good time doing it.
Well, I hope so.
I think the last one went down pretty well. Elements of the last one didn't, but that's what we expect.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
good. But there were some also really good bits. So we are back to do the same again. And this time you have brought the fun fact.
I have. And it's beautifully, you'll like this, it's linked to the last episode we did. So I think that was episode 54. So if you haven't seen that, at the end of the episodes, we do like a little bit of a quiz, almost like a reward for managing to sit through and listening to all of us. But one of the questions you'll remember was, what year was the first modern marathon? And you incorrectly guessed about 20 years wrong, but it was 1896. And then you asked me, what was the winning time?
Oh,
So would you like to have a guess and redeem yourself? What was the winning time of the first modern marathon run in 1896?
see, what I want to do is I want to actually ask you for more information about the person, where it was, all of this.
He's Greek.
He's Greek.
Yes.
Oh, well.
It was in Athens.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that it was 3 hours and 27 minutes.
Faster.
Faster? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
He ran a 2:58:50. And I've been practicing pronouncing his name.
Oh, please
And
do.
I still don't want to say it. Spyridon Luis.
It's
Or
quite a
Louis.
sick name.
It's
However
a great
you
name.
say it, it's a great name. Okay, so the first guy to win a marathon broke 3 hours.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's good.
Considering that, like, not carbon plated, I assume, and neither nylon. No, not nylon
We
plated.
didn't have nylon.
If you don't understand that reference, go back an episode because it's a very important thing that you hear. Talking of which, that was last episode's topic, and you're bringing the first topic today,
I am. Yeah.
which is
We're talking mental first.
we're going to do the mental topic first.
So I want to talk about comparison being the thief of joy, and the issues that may come across when you're comparing yourself, whether it's comparing yourself to a previous version of yourself when maybe you were fitter or stronger or faster or whatever, and then also comparing yourself to other people that you train with or that you see on social media, and all of kind of like the pitfalls that come along with that.
Cool. I think an interesting approach to start with is that I, again, think this is one of those topics where there is just a gray area of where comparison's good and where it's bad.
Yeah.
Because if we look at,
Oh yeah, it
Let's
doesn't
take-
necessarily have to be bad. does
let's
it?
take us.
Yeah.
Threshold Friday, which is a thing that ROXD puts on every Friday. So ROXD is a sponsor. If you want to come down and you want to try something that's a bit high rocks related, but generally open fitness for anyone, then come on down. It's currently held at E1 in North London, and get involved.
Yeah.
Now, on those sessions, when I turn up, Chucks and I will say hi, how was your week? The silent conversation is you and me. If it's a partner workout, we might team up. If it's not, we're not going to say it, but there are
We're going
good
to
points.
race.
Yeah, we're going to race. And immediately, like during that, I'm enjoying it. And then when I come away from it, I'm really analyzing my performance and where you're at as well and like how that fits. So I think that's good because when I come away from it, I kind of know where my weaknesses are. And then I'm like, cool, I need to be better at that.
Yeah, as long as you take it positively, because it's very easy to go away from it and go, oh, I was so much slower, my training's not working, I need to do more, and you start beating yourself up. But if you can take the positives away from it and go, yeah, he ran faster than me, but I definitely had him on the burpees, or he definitely had me on the Echo bike, but we were pretty similar on X, Y, and Z, and then just try and figure out the areas that you can improve on. But I think it's like, if you train for an individual sport, when you're just putting yourself against yourself, it's nice to have that as a reference point, but in reality, you just need to make yourself better. So if we train together, I know I'm going to push myself much harder, and I'm grateful for that because I know I'm going to get more out of the session than maybe if I was just training by myself. But I think and I just wanted to bring this topic up because it's something that I've struggled with myself since I started training, basically. And I'm sure you'd have had points where you're like, I'm not as fit as this person, or I'm not as fit as I used to be, or et cetera, et cetera. So it's just like a nice thing to discuss to make sure that people know that they're not like by themselves when they're having these thought processes.
there's an ongoing joke, I think, which is the day you get body dysmorphia is the day you do your first workout, which is so true. And like, there's been running jokes for years as well about getting a pump, and the pump is you see yourself and you're like, oh, this is what I'm gonna look like.
Yeah.
And then in like 2-3 months, maybe you actually do look like that pumped version of yourself from 2-3 months ago. But then you get a pump and you're like, and you never achieve the pump status.
Yeah.
But you are constantly comparing yourself versus that. And that's also where like gym lighting comes in from, because if we go back to, we've talked about it before, I did 75 hard, and the photo I've got of myself as my last photo is like, I was in the best shape at the time of my life. But the lighting was also really good. So even like 2 weeks after, I was looking at myself and I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
I know we stopped doing it, but that quick? And in reality, it's just because I was in my own lighting and I didn't look quite as cut as I was.
Yeah. And I think also like that's a lot of the issues with social media as well, because you're just seeing the highlight reel of everyone. They're in the best lighting, they're post-workout, they've got a pump, and you're looking at it and going, wow, they're in great shape. What am I doing? But you just need to take everything with a pinch of salt, I think. And also, I think there is merit to comparison if you're training in a group of people who are also very, very good. But it's hard then sometimes to step away from that and go, I'm actually really good as well, and I'm hanging with these people that I'm training with. But you just everything gets warped. There's like this completely different like universe that you step into when everyone's at the top level. But I'm hoping that in training that kind of pulls you up together.
I'm going to ask you a question about 4 different comparison areas, because I'd be interested to know what you think your balance is.
Okay.
So when it comes to comparing yourself in a fitness setting or aesthetics or whatever you choose with this, how often do you find yourself comparing where you are at now versus an older you, versus other people you train with or around you, versus people you see on social media that you don't necessarily know, and lastly, the elite in the given sport?
Interesting. I think if it's a snapshot of where I am now, I feel like I've actually got a pretty healthy relationship, and I'm not comparing myself really with anyone else or even a previous self. You rewind a couple of months or maybe even a couple of years when I was injured and I wasn't training as much. I was comparing myself with a previous self the whole time. And for those of you who don't know, my background predominantly was actually track running. So now coming back to doing more running, it's very easy for me to compare myself to that time. And I'm not miles away from where I was, which is nice. But I'm trying my hardest to rationalize it in my head, to go, my training's completely changed now and I'm doing lots of other things, not just running. Comparing myself with people around me, that's probably the main one at the moment. The elite in the sport, no.
Well, interestingly, you actually like actively don't watch the YouTube videos of certain people. Because it just...
Yeah, 100%. That's actually such a good point. And I actively try and stay clear of consuming media that could potentially cause comparison or whatever. But yeah, the group of people that we train with and hang around, I don't necessarily compare myself to them, because our training's slightly different and we're at slightly different points in our lives. But I definitely keep an eye on where they're at. But I use that more as motivation.
Okay.
How about you?
Mine changes a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But as much as I agree that comparison is the thief of joy, I do like to use it as much as possible as motivation. Like, I have, in my background of my training, specifically in the gym and fitness, my background is very lonely.
Yeah.
I have trained by myself for most of that. And don't get me wrong, I do like training with other people. I sometimes find it distracting, but I also, training for me is a quiet place. It's where I do a lot of my deep thinking. And so sometimes I don't like having other people there. And so when it comes to being able to drive myself, the motivation doesn't come from the fact that I'm going to train with other people or necessarily what other people around me are doing. Because quite frankly, I've got my own trajectory. I'm not that bothered. I'm really happy for other people that I train with when they are improving and they're doing really, really well. But that doesn't necessarily drive me. I actually do take a bit more motivation, and I enjoy watching the elites. And that, again, we come back to it a lot. I'm the classic overthinker in sport, where I look for any possible marginal gain. And so if I see someone is doing something different mechanically in a movement, then I want to know why. I want to try it. I want to see if it works for me. And that goes back to when I was playing rugby and I was kicking conversions. And I don't know how many times, because you used to play rugby as well, how many different kicking tees you would have tried.
Yeah.
And I tried all of them. I had all of them. And I was never really sure which one was best because I didn't spend long enough with each one. But then we go into like American football, and the way of coaching to throw a ball for me was dramatically different. When I was first being coached, I was told to keep everything in line. And then I met an American coach who was about 20 years further down the line of understanding how the body works. And it was actually all about your rotation. And then I started to see improvement. And then we come into high rocks, and instead of having this sort of one set of mechanical movements to work through, there are 8 with the stations and there's a 9th with the running. And so all of a sudden I've got loads of different techniques to consider. And then I'm not necessarily trying to do them in the fastest way. Like, I understand if we take burpees, for example, which probably my weakest thing, the fastest way to do a burpee is, I think, and you can correct me here, is to go down, legs relatively wide, and then bring your legs back up after you've gone together, and up you stand and you do your little hop. But that doesn't work in this setting. So it's then also about efficiency.
Sure.
And so
again, context of race and
exactly. Yeah. And then the rules change and all of this goes on. But I'm really, really interested when I see someone that is in there at the elite, when they do something technique wise for the sport, or even in their training. Like, one of my favorite things I've learned recently, and this goes for anyone that's not necessarily doing high rocks, it's seriously, if you're trying to increase your cardio level and running is something that you want to be doing, but you have problems with getting shin splints, which everyone gets, runner's knee or other injuries like that, then I've done a lot of supplementation with a bike, an exercise bike in a gym. Specifically, I use the C2 bike. But one thing that I found really interesting is to be able to simulate the movement of running while on the bike. If I'm doing like a very sort of chilled out zone 2 level effort, I will set the damper to a level where I can have the bike RPM match my running cadence. And then I set the damper based on the fact that I need to be in the heart rate zone. So I'll get my feet to the running cadence and I'll adjust the difficulty of the bike until my heart rate is steady where I want it to be. And what that means is that I'm simulating, well, I'm getting the heart rate zone time that I need, and my body is still getting the simulation of moving my legs as fast as they need to move. The benefit is that I'm not putting the load through them.
Sure, you reduce the impact.
That is, and that is something that I've learned from the elites that I wouldn't necessarily have tried, and that has changed my training massively. So I like to compare against that. I don't compare myself much in my immediate network, apart from if I'm in direct competition. And then people on social media comes and goes. Depends if they actually seem like they know what they're talking about. If they do, then I have to build a level of trust before I can actually compare what I'm doing.
It seems for me like, rather than comparison, you're taking inspiration from these people.
Yeah.
And it's like, what can I learn from this person and how can I implement that to improve my performance?
And I think that's something that, and I don't want to get like all spiritual, but that's something that I try and do on like in everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, I completely respect, and I hope that I continue to do this when it comes to things like the videography game that I'm into now. There might be someone who started 2 days ago and bought their first camera.
But you can still learn from them.
There's something to learn from everyone. Like, they might have decided to get
agree.
in, and that's what I love. And so even if I find someone on social media, I'm not going to trust everything they say first, like straight away, but I understand that I'm probably seeing them because something somewhere is of value. And, you know, there are controversial people out there who might not be providing the best value, but I still believe that if you were to meet them in person, there'd probably be something there. So yeah, I think it can definitely be the thief of joy, especially when you're early on in a sport. That's where I really struggle. And again, if I talk about the time between when I moved from American football to finding out what high rocks was, I basically just went to a bodybuilding split, because the thing that I'd always struggled with, being quite tall with long limbs, is that aesthetically it was really hard to look the way I wanted, which was not overly bulky, but like definitely a muscular physique
Sure.
across my whole body. And so I switched to bodybuilding because I was like, now's a chance for me to like fix that before I decide what I'm doing next. But then that entire period of time, everything I was doing was solely based on comparing how someone else looked to me and doing what they do, which was probably the least healthy time, which is why I'm so glad that it was such a short period of time.
But I think as you develop training maturity, the comparison with other people just gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you just start to focus a bit more on yourself, which I've definitely found myself in training as well.
Well, I wonder as well if you would agree that probably comes from experience within the sport. Because when you're, a newbie to a sport and you enter the world of competition in it, all you can do is see what other people are doing. You don't have anything to look back on of yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're further down the line, not necessarily actually in a sport, but like you are now, you're comparing back to when you used to run. So you still understand what good running technique is, what good running times are. Whereas someone that doesn't come from a running background and was trying to train with you, they would just look directly at you because you're that point of call for them.
Sure.
So I definitely think as I get older and I discover I'm still not going to go pro in another sport, I come to a level of acceptance and how can I actually be as best as I can be? So yeah, I really come and go with comparing.
Yeah.
Like I like it, but
there's definitely some merit, but I think it's a slippery slope. And if you're starting to compare yourself because of aesthetic reasons or et cetera, it can be a really challenging place to be mentally. And it's something that you want to try and avoid, I think, and just focus on yourself and do the best that you can for yourself.
In your coaching experience, have you ever had people come to you and want to change something because they are comparing themselves to someone else?
Yes.
And how do you deal with that?
I think it depends on what it is exactly that they're comparing themselves to. I'd say the majority of people who I've experienced with that situation, they're results driven and they're comparing themselves to someone else's results, and they've gone, I've seen this person and they've improved X amount. I think I should have also been making that progress in the same amount of time. Why have I not? Can you help me with that kind of thing? I don't think it's necessarily ever coming from the negative perspective of comparison. And I'm hoping that they've come to me because they've seen what my clients have achieved and gone, oh, he can help me out. I
think one of the approaches that I've taken there's one individual athlete that comes to mind with is when I was coaching American football, there's a guy called Bailey who, I don't know if he'll be listening to this. If you are, hi Bailey, who is one of the most intelligent players I've ever been around. And physically, when he was younger, he was at the same level of all the other quarterbacks in the UK. So he absolutely dominated the sport because he was more intelligent. Yeah. He was the same as them. As he grew up, he wasn't the freak athlete that others became, or others that even discovered the sport later were able to do. So they could get away with being dumb, launching the ball to a guy who was 80 yards downfield and had 3 defenders around him because he was so strong and so gifted at throwing the ball that he could outthrow them or whatever. And Bailey would sometimes come to me and be like, I'm getting really frustrated. Sure. Like, we're not working on me throwing the ball further. And that's something that I'm struggling with in games. And I just had to focus on the context of it and be like, look, throwing the ball 30 yards is pretty good. Most passes aren't completed over that. You've got this guy who you're comparing yourself to that can throw the ball 60 yards downfield.
But he hasn't got the ability to see the game or read the game or understand the game.
And a first down is 10 yards. If you can get 2 of those, 2 throws that are 5 yards, you've got me a first down. And the thing is, even if you could score on every single throw you did, I wouldn't want you to, because the defense would be so tired by the end of the game that we might still lose, even if you can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't lose if you score on every single play, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like reframing, actually, like that is something we will work on gradually. but you are your own athlete, and like as much like understand that you will beat that person because of your strength.
Yeah, that must happen like so frequently. And again, it comes back to, you asked me about my coaching, and I have clients come to me and go, oh, this person's doing this, or I see this person doing this. I need to be doing more of this. Why aren't we doing it? I'm just like, Rome wasn't built in a day. We're building brick by brick by brick. And I'm hoping that as we get into the more congested part of the season now, that the patience will pay off, and the clients who have been potentially struggling with that and wanting to do more and been chomping at the bit to do more will see the dividends paid now, because they've been patient and they've been willing to listen to my advice. But we'll see.
I think as well, that is in itself competition. And when a competition goes right for you, so if I take the example of Bailey again, or even myself in a similar way, to Bailey, I wasn't the guy that can throw the ball 80 yards downfield, but I could be intelligent. And I think back to when you win, you're so confident in as to why you won. But then the moment you don't do as well as you should have done, or you lose, suddenly the same reason that you would have won in a different setting is actually the reason you lost, and you decide that that's a bad thing about it. And we look at where we're at today. It's taken me a very, very short in reflection period of time to actually understand, okay, if I was racing someone in High Rocks, the first station is the ski erg. I don't need to rush to get to the ski erg.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead and burn your energy, getting 20 seconds ahead of me on the run, I'm pretty confident that we'll still come out of the first station at a similar time, because ski erg is one of my strengths. Fortunately, that's the case. If it was burpees first, then I might have to go and burn myself, but I can trust my pacing and my understanding of where I'm good. And yeah, I could go up against someone that could do one of the other stations in under 2 minutes. And I know I'm not going to do that. And if I did want to do that, then maybe I'd ruin the rest of my race.
Sure.
And it's kind of having, again, that experience and understanding of what your strength is as an athlete. And it's not a bad thing necessarily to be bad at one thing. Like, understand that is just, you've got another thing to be really good at. So yeah, I like the topic, and I hope that you guys listening are also kind of resonating with some of that. I wonder if people are going to resonate with you on the next bit. So,
oh dear,
we're entering what Charles would never admit is, actually you probably would admit, is your favorite part of the podcast.
Oh yeah, I love it.
This week he has multiple things that he could talk about, but what in particular have you brought to...
Let's put some context on that, because
grind my gears.
My brand is becoming pretty miserable. My personal brand is becoming more and more grumpy, more miserable. And I've obviously been away for 2 weeks. And over the 2 weeks, I basically just stewed away and had a long note section with everything that really riled me up. And I had to stop posting on social media. But I don't need to put that energy out into the world. I'll do it through the medium of the podcast. Anyway, grind my gears. My first topic, if we have time, we can go through multiple topics.
Okay, cool.
Let's just say my topic for grind my gears. Again, it's quite niche, pretty sport specific, but people tapering incorrectly. So let's say you've got an event, a race, whatever, a competition. You get up to maybe a week before, maybe a little bit longer, depending on what the competition is, and you start tapering. And I think there's lots of misconceptions with tapering, but a thing that I see so frequently is the taper just becomes getting rid of any sort of intensity, getting rid of any sort of weight training, and just doing like longer, easier aerobic efforts. Now, to put context into it, when we taper correctly, you're looking to do 3 things. All right. The first one is reduce any sort of aerobic fatigue, because it's the aerobic fatigue that requires a lot more of the body's resources and energy to recover from. And what you're trying to do is get to the start line as fresh as possible. So if I'm doing these, even if it's an easy effort, like a zone 2 effort, but like 45 minutes to 90 minutes of just low aerobic work, that's just burning through my energy stores. And although it doesn't feel too taxing on the body and you go, oh, I'm going to be so fresh on race day, actually it's just depleting your energy, depleting. So that's one thing that we're trying to achieve, which I think is done poorly in a taper, or people don't understand that's what you want to try and avoid when you're tapering. The second one is limiting new exercises for obvious reasons. You don't want to do something you've never done before and in turn injure yourself. I see that less on social media, but the first one definitely is a misconception. And then the final one, you're trying to limit volume, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're limiting intensity. So there's certain strategies that you can use when you limit volume by doing less warm-up sets, etc., but you still want your intensity to be quite high. You still want to lift heavy weights and stimulate that. It's a maintenance phase. We're not looking to elicit any adaptation, but within that, lots of intensity. You can still lift heavy weights, but just limit the amount you're doing, and try not to do too much aerobic volume, which is going to cause fatigue. But that was quite a niche specific.
It is niche, but one thing that people may not even realize that listen to this is the idea of tapering. So I can't remember if it was a discussion we had previously or if it was something that I actually saw on social media. When someone put up a workout and said that they were just getting ready for competition. And one of the comments was, you shouldn't be doing anything. You should be sat with your feet up, doing absolutely nothing.
I guess it depends at what point in the timeline that was. And I think I'm getting spammed with it at the moment because obviously we talk about it a lot. We like to talk about it. The High Rocks, we're kind of a busy point in the season now as we ramp up towards World Champs. There's people trying to get last place qualifiers for World Champs, etc., etc. There's lots of races going on. So I'm getting spammed with a lot of this, oh, I'm tapering or I'm deloading or whatever. But yeah, I think it depends at what point in the timeline you are. Probably the day before you're racing, you're still doing something. We talk about a shakeout run or just kind of getting the juices flowing a little bit. But within your taper week, you definitely have a full day of rest where you've just got your feet up and you're recovering. You're trying to replenish all energy stores. I think at the level that we're competing at and my clients are competing at the whole, they just crave volume and crave training and need to be doing something, get itchy feet as soon as they sit still for like 5 minutes. So that's why it's nice and strategic to have some sort of shakeout run before they race. And also a lot of the pro races at like 8 p.m. in the evening. So even on the day, I'm getting some of my clients to do something before they race, whether it's a little shakeout run, probably somewhere between 3 and 5 kilometers, probably on the lower end of that scale. But within that, some sort of high intensity bursts. So maybe 3 times 75 meter strides or 3 times 45-second efforts, just to start to prepare the central nervous system and the body before they start competing. So I'd say if you look at your taper as a week, probably Monday, Tuesday, you can still train. It's a pretty good intensity. Again, we're probably limiting the aerobic volume. Wednesday, we might do something, potentially not, depending on who my client is. Thursday, we'll rest, and then Friday, shakeout, race Saturday, if that's the structure, for example, something like that. But yeah, I never would suggest stopping training completely for a week because your body's just like, it's not used to that anyway.
Well, I can also just attest, my training's been a bit wayward in the last couple of weeks, and coming back, my heart rate wouldn't settle. Everything felt a bit unusual, and it took some time, took a couple of workouts for me to actually feel a bit more normal again, and I would not want that as my race.
And I think that's the same thing as me saying you would never introduce anything new into your training routine. You wouldn't start grabbing out the Bosu ball and doing other stuff like that, the week before you race. In the same vein, you wouldn't start completely changing up your training routine. It's going to be slightly different because you're tapering. And at the same vein that you wouldn't do anything different with your nutrition on the day of your race or during your race. You're not going to try new gels, or you're not going to try a new porridge for breakfast or whatever in case it doesn't sit right. So it's the same idea. We try and have consistency and your body be as familiar with the processes as possible before we race.
Right, it's going to be grind my gears.
That wasn't actually that grindy.
That was
like educational.
Really diplomatic and educational. That's not normally what we do.
I know. I don't know what's gone on.
I might do something somewhat similar.
Okay.
So, it's been in the news.
Okay.
Ben Connor is a runner who's represented Great Britain multiple times. However, recently, in order to compete and represent Great Britain, he has declined because he was asked, as all of the athletes are, to pay £1,100 to compete. And there is not enough funding for him to do so from his side, because there are sports in the UK that do not get enough funding. And what grinds my gears big time is that we are at a point where there are people on social media who for a 30-second advert will get paid more than some entire teams that are representing their country will get to go and do a competition. And this is actually something for those of you that are OGs and have gone back through all the podcasts and listened. I had a guest episode with Liv Thomas, who plays, and she's back now. She's had a rough period of injuries, but she plays lacrosse for Great Britain. Well, for England, but yeah, Great Britain when it goes to the Olympics. They don't have a sponsor. So when they go to competitions in the world, all of the players pay out of their own pocket to represent their country. And don't get me wrong, it's still an extreme honor to get the opportunity to represent your country. However, what I don't understand is, like I said, how there are people on social media that will get paid more for a story post than would be enough to support an entire team to go out. And one of the things that we made clear when we were doing that episode was that they were number one ranked seed for the competition.
Yeah.
They won.
And still didn't have a sponsor.
And they're not the first team to do that, the UK. And what I don't understand is from a business perspective, okay? I am now my own boss, my own businessman.
Rather than paying
one person for 30 seconds who may have, I mean, as low as 10,000 followers, you have a team, a squad of people with your logo, your branding. And arguably, I would say all of those athletes would be so much more appreciative of that opportunity that all of a sudden you have 11 athletes, let's say, who are willing to share and actually grow your community.
Sure.
And then if they go on and win, all of a sudden you've got free ads.
And you'd
in
imagine
all the
those
medias.
players have a little bit of a following, couple thousand maybe.
Exactly.
All combined, you're probably getting more reach than that one influencer.
And if I was to ask you honestly, if Joe Blogs on
My guy.
Joe Blogs, my guy, huge following on Instagram, posted something talking about this particular clothing that he wears or I don't know, supplement product that he takes. And then he does that, and then the very next story post is also another supplement that he takes, that sort of thing, or clothing product that he wears.
Like no consistency.
Would you back that, or would you look at what Team GB are wearing, or taking for their supplements to win competitions and believe in that? It really pisses me off that we're in a world where, for some reason, the actual athletes are being ignored by the brands that really should be supporting them for not a lot of money.
But the fitness influencers.
But the fitness influencers who, I'm not saying they are loaded and they get enough. Like they got a job and it's actually not as easy as people give them credit for.
Sure.
But I don't think that if you're a company that is trying to get yourself out into communities, grow your own community, that turning to an individual is the place to go when there are so many opportunities to support the development of sport in this country and internationally, and give people a chance to compete on the international stage, no matter what their background. Because there are certain sports now which aren't necessarily being, the competition isn't necessarily on the highest level that it could be, because there are athletes who are literally unable to financially compete.
Having to make the decision to not compete or go to a big competition, which is like a life goal or a dream. Imagine you make it to the Olympics and then you have to fund your whole trip to the Olympics. It's crazy.
And take another example of a very well-known sport for this at this point is Formula One. You can be an incredible driver. You can win championships in Formula 2, and someone who came 8th could go to Formula 1 first because
they've got the money.
Someone in their family has got the money, and that's how it happens. And I'm not targeting any one driver in particular, but one person that springs to mind, surname begins with S and ends in Troll, Lance, I don't think has got the quality. I'm not saying he's a bad driver. Don't get me wrong. Put me in a car against him, he'll still lose. I'll still lose. But I would say that there are other drivers that maybe deserve a second shot over him. I mean, we look at...
Or a first shot.
Or a first shot, and that's the nature of the sport now. And it's grown the sport massively, but not necessarily giving you the best quality.
There's so many politics in F1 and sports where money is the driving force.
So I say again, I think that a statement is being made and that's why it's good to have it covered in the news. But I think potentially more athletes should consider taking a step back for a competition. And if you are an owner of a brand, do the right thing and do some thinking, because you could really, really massively improve your income just by doing something that you should have been doing the whole time.
Well, even if it doesn't improve your income, it's a much better avenue to support the
100%.
development, like you say, of
Yeah.
grassroots sports in the UK and sports. England lacrosse, the women's team, that's not grassroots.
No, that's
They're
been
like the
around
top
for a long
level.
time. Yeah.
We've got a member at my old gym who also played England lacrosse, and these guys are like phenomenal athletes and like so dedicated, and it's just a shame that they're not so supported financially.
Yeah. So that's what grinds my gears. I don't know if you've got another one that you want to throw in.
I do actually have a list.
We've been quite
I have
serious.
Two more. I have two more.
Go on, give me a.
It'll be a whistle stop tour. The protein variety of a food that already exists with an adequate amount of protein in. So, e.g., protein bagel has 8 grams protein, and it's on the branding, the marketing. Yeah, buy these protein bagels, more expensive. Normal bagel, 8.5 grams of protein. It has more protein in it. I don't know if the size of the bagel, but that just grinds my gears. Like, don't just put something protein on it for the sake of selling it. That'd be one. We'll just get that out of the way. I don't know if you see this one. It's so niche. Instagram stories, Friday night. I've posted a photo of the squat rack, and I've written Fridays at the bar. You seen that?
No.
Oh, come on. Fridays
you
at the
saying
bar.
you did
No.
this?
I that just grinds my gears. I'm like, they're not going to the legitimate bar to have a drink. They're at the gym, and they want you to know that they're grinding, and they're at the metaphorical bar.
When you see my story this Friday, just know it's targeted.
Come on, stop it.
One thing I do want to say though, the second one, we need this. This is a topic that in my household is actually well known. There is a triangle, and I think a lot of people do this. There is a triangle when it comes to food. The triangle needs perfect harmony, and it's protein content, calories, and price.
Sure.
And you can give a score to items based on an equal reflection of all of those, and then you know how good it is. And I'm pretty sure I actually saw, maybe on Instagram or on TikTok the other day, someone who is just, they've gone ahead with their scoring system. I don't think I actually agreed with it, but they at least were able to compare all foods on this triangle scoring system. And so like you could pick up a protein version of something, and while it's got 2 extra grams of protein, the calories were so high and the price was so high that actually it's actually valued less at the other one. But yeah, it's a system that I need to finalize, and maybe when I finalize it, I'll bring it on, and we can all understand how to do it.
I like that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's grind my gears.
Let's park that
So I can go away and come back to it. We're moving on to the physical topic.
Cool.
Physical topic we've somewhat touched on in the mental.
I was going to say
quite well linked here.
I'm surprised you didn't make a link, but we had to get my gears in.
Mechanics versus technique coaching.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
So again, from the standpoint that we've both done coaching, but different amounts.
And different experiences,
experiences
within coaching.
And I think one of the things that I find really interesting is you walk into a gym.
Mm-hmm.
You look at someone who is doing a movement and you think, Jesus, what are they doing? And we've spoken about this before, but sometimes you don't know what they are doing.
Yeah.
And so you and I are quite good at giving someone the benefit of the doubt to begin with, before we think, actually, no, they have no idea what they're doing.
Mm.
But when it comes to actually coaching or being an athlete, when are the mechanics a problem? And when are the mechanics of the way you move your body not enough of a problem that you can't still be elite at what you do?
I think this is so interesting, and the caveat needs to be that the fitness industry just has so many different kind of trends, and within those trends, not necessarily advice that's good. And I think there's a lot of scaremongering on the internet around what's right and wrong, like rounding your back in a deadlift and et cetera, et cetera. Like there can be a certain amount of, or an acceptable deviation from what we might consider perfect form. But there is a lot of scaremongering on the internet. And sometimes the best way to train, especially for sport, is exploring different ranges and playing around with different movements. So you do see some weird, wacky things, and then instantly people go, yeah, that guy doesn't know what they're doing, or they're crazy, or they're going to hurt themselves. But I think they're few and far between. So if you did walk into like a commercial gym and you saw someone doing something wacky, they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, you spoke to me a little bit about this earlier, about the mechanics of an American football throw. I think, and if you chat about that a little bit more, what I will say will make a bit more sense. But I think it's only right to change it if there's going to be some sort of knock-on effect from that, i.e. they're going to hurt themselves or get injured, especially in sport. So if you like explain the...
Yeah, so when it comes to throwing,
Yeah.
and this isn't specific to American football, there are nuances within an American football throw. But so for everyone that can understand, if I was to ask you to pick up and throw a tennis ball, you would pick it up and you would throw it in your natural way.
Sure.
For most people, that would mean that their elbow is relatively similar to their shoulder height.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't start in line with their shoulder. They'd probably turn their body or go behind, and then they would finish with some sort of wrist flick for a bit of extra speed. That's pretty standard. That's the basics of a throw.
Mm-hmm.
There are other movements in other sports which are considered throwing actions, even though they're not throwing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the easiest to understand when I say this, because you're not throwing anything, but is often given the term, is throwing a punch.
Sure.
Punching is a throwing motion.
Yeah.
Throwing can be taught by understanding punching mechanics. So when you stand and if you were going to punch someone, it would probably go viral if you knocked someone out by standing straight on it.
Yeah.
Because you need the torque on the rotation.
Yeah.
So you stand mostly side on.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't stand completely side on, because if you do that, then you're unable to turn your body to let the force go to the target. So you usually stand slightly offset.
Mm-hmm.
In a sport like American football, you do stand side on, theoretically, but when you start the throwing motion, and this goes for most sports again, if you were to throw something, you would naturally pick up your front foot, move it out of the way of your body, put it on the ground, and then you pivot around that.
Mm-hmm.
So you clear that pathway for you to do so. That enables you to generate a bit more torque in your lower body, but also enables you to let the force go in the line that you want it to. Another nuance with an American football throw, for example, that is different to, let's say, baseball. In baseball, if you're trying to throw a fastball, you're trying to generate as much velocity as possible in that ball towards, not actually the guy who's batting.
Yeah.
But you're trying to generate as much speed as possible. You would still be doing the same in American football, but one of the things that was believed and taught beforehand was that you had to finish with your hand really high. Mm-hmm. So rather than your elbow necessarily being in line with your shoulder with this type of throw, you're actually looking for it to be more touching your ear. And the reason for that is so that you're able to throw it over people, because there are 10 guys in front of you, or up to 10 guys in front of you, who are going to try and block that with their hands. And so then it was started to look at more like volleyball when you're doing a spike. You go nice and high.
Yeah.
But what people weren't understanding was that you lose the rotational aspect a little bit when you release that high. Sorry. The other thing that people didn't understand was that a lot of the time, what the body will do is adjust to moving targets.
Yeah.
So if a hand is coming up, the actual likelihood that a skinny arm gets in the way of the ball, even when they're good at doing what they're doing by blocking it, is very low.
Sure.
And again, if we take the viral throws that someone like Patrick Mahomes has made, where they're real sidearms,
Yeah.
that is only plausible to him because his lower body mechanics create enough velocity, and he's got what we refer to as the different arm slots and arm angles to be able to release it at different angles with the same level of velocity. That is a throwing motion. And another sport which doesn't get looked at enough, but people understand there are different techniques and accept it rather than trying to change it so much, is golf. Golf is a throwing motion. Doesn't feel like it because you hold on to the club unless it's wet.
Yeah. But it's the same.
But it's the same thing.
Yeah,
and so if I was to talk generally about a golf swing, I would say to someone that you want to lift it up let's say you're hitting a drive, not a putt. You're taking the driver, you want to come back on a path that's comfortable to you. When you come back down, you want to come back down shallower. And the thought process behind that is you want to go in to out, because the biggest issue that new golfers have is they hit a slice, which is where you come out to in, you come across the face of the ball. And that generally means that all of the force isn't necessarily going into the ball. You're losing some of it into the spin and you lose the ball in the woods. In to out doesn't actually necessarily mean the ball's going to curve the other way, but it will probably correct by thinking about that into a much straighter shot.
Yeah.
And that is a basic thing that you would teach. However, immediately I've said, don't worry about the angle it necessarily goes back at, because that's fine. You just got to make sure that the angle that you come down at is slightly flatter. And that is coaching someone based on what they naturally do, rather than being like, I'm going to put you in one of these swing things that you've seen online where you slide the club 100%. Up and down until it's your muscle memory.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where it comes from, with it being like a throwing action, and how that all goes.
I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, like, viewer retention or listener retention is now 0.
Oh yeah, sorry,
we've lost everyone.
On a mad one.
Last time I asked you to talk about American football, but it is fascinating. I find it very, very interesting, and it comes back to that point of, I'm only then going to correct someone's natural movement pattern if it's going to cause harm to them. And I use my experience from coaching weightlifting. Everyone's got different limb length. They've got different length legs, different length arms. And as a result, everyone's setup is slightly different. How wide they hold the bar is slightly different. There's no one size fits all, and there's no mold. Look at every single pro golf player on tour. Everybody's swing is different. You might look at someone's swing and go, oh my God, that is a thing of beauty. Insert Tiger Woods swing, right? Or you look at someone else's swing, you go, that is so janky. Does it have the same response or the same outcome? Typically, yeah, they're all amazing pro golfers. Like, there's no one size fit all. Look at tennis players. Do they all hit the ball the same? Do they all serve the same? It's all different. So you have to work with physiology, the size and shape of someone, and then also what comes most naturally. And the thing with the natural side of it, if you've been playing sport from a very young age, you just have that inherent ability to do something based off what your body does. And like throwing and jumping is very inherent to humans, and that way of movement. So again, you look at some of the pro golfers, like, I'm using that as an example because that's what we've spoken about. They've relearned how to hit the golf ball based off results. So if they're not performing well, they go, I need to change something. I change my swing. That's mad to me that they're able to unlearn and then relearn a new movement pattern and potentially come back better. Not always, and sometimes they have to revert back to the way they were playing before. But it's super interesting. But I use baseball again because I know the injury rate in shoulders and elbows are so high with pro and amateur probably as well. Baseball pitchers, that's the name.
Yeah.
People who throw the ball, because there's so much force and strain put through those joints when they throw the ball, and the amount of times they've thrown it in their life. If it's going to cause harm to them, then maybe you have to change the mechanic. And I guess they're not changing the mechanic because that's the most optimal for developing speed on the ball or shape on the ball. But as a result, they retire from the sport and then have 13 surgeries on their elbow or whatever.
Well, I think it's massively about timing as well, because if you're in a competition phase,
interesting,
then you don't really want to... I mean, if you're trying to find a way to be faster for your next competition, and it is even, let's say, like 3 months out, if it's a big issue, then you might be better off getting as fast as you can with that technique,
what you have, right?
Rather than trying to revert, because in the time that you need to spend learning the new technique, you're probably going to be going slower or not performing as efficiently, even though the technique is better. In the long run, it will be fine, but for that competition, you won't do as well. If you're in a situation where you can live with that, knowing confidently that you're going to stick to it because it's going to suck, then that's fine, and you might end up doing better in the long run.
If you have like the shape of your season has an off season, that's when you might want to wait for it as well, and it's kind of that like short-term pain for long-term gain. And that's something that I do frequently in the gym with everyone and anyone. We use the rowing machine as an example. How many times you've seen someone rowing poorly and you change the way they row, and it's just the worst thing ever for them because their technique is better, but they're rowing slower. But what we've unlocked is a higher ceiling because their efficiency is better, their ability to row for longer is better. So over time, they will improve. But in the short term, they're like, what the hell have you done? I'm rowing so badly now.
And interestingly, this isn't necessarily a case for things that I would say are more one-dimensional, like rowing, where you are basically moving along the same plane in the same way. But going back to other sports that I've done, we talked about rugby, even things like cricket, golf, American football. One of the biggest things that I enjoyed doing most as a coach, but also as an athlete in my own training, was training the common stuff. And what I mean by the common stuff is probably not what you think. And this is what this was really difficult to explain to any athlete that I had, but I guarantee you this made the biggest difference to anyone I have ever coached, or even to my own performance in sport, is if we take, give me any sport.
Ice hockey.
Okay, so in ice hockey, one of the things you might need to do is practice your slap shots. Okay, so you might be there and you might do 50 slap shots, and you might be like, cool, I'm seeing improvement. And you go into a game and you improve maybe one or two more of your shots as on target. Okay, cool. I, as your coach, would say you're going to do some of those. We're mainly going to do that to build your confidence in that you can be that accurate. But we're going to spend more time with you doing a slap shot on the move, maybe off your wrong foot.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm going to keep a stick in front of you every single time you do it. Because all of a sudden, you're getting used to the in-game experience. And when I was coaching throwing in American football, one of our warm-up drills, so we weren't putting a lot of stress on, but keeping it interesting, was that I'd have two quarterbacks running around in a square and they couldn't do the same throw twice. And they couldn't stay still.
Yeah.
They had to be constantly on the
that's
move.
cool.
And so essentially, what was really funny was they were finding all these different ways to throw a ball. And I genuinely promise you, because I have the game film saved, every single time we would have a game week, you would see two of those that they hadn't known they could do before would come up in a game. And our head coach or whoever was calling the plays would come over and be like, how do you do that? And I'm obviously just gonna be like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how he pulled that off in a game. But I know that actually the mind muscle connection has happened, and the confidence in that
actually do it.
I can do this is there. And I think that's something that's played into even what I do now.
Well, that comes back to what I said about exploring different things and playing within the sport that you do or the training that you do to unlock different movement patterns and like you say, the confidence to do different things. Like it's fascinating.
Shoot me, I'm going to bring Hyrox again.
Oh, God.
Hyrox up again. But I don't spend that much time at a track. Part of that is logistical. I wish I could spend more time around a track, I guess. But when there's an option for a good flat surface that is a public place, let's say for those that are in London, you know about Battersea Park, I would rather do my interval training in Battersea Park than on a track when I'm getting close to a race. When we're talking more about race preparation, because having to think about other people and avoid things is something that happens in the race. Sure. I need to know on a busy day in Battersea Park if I can run my kilometer at 4 minutes or faster. If I can do it
weaving,
dog walkers, if I can do it on an empty track,
bikes,
that's great. But that's not going to happen unless I'm in the very first wave and I'm by far the fastest person. Yeah. And even then, it's only going to happen until I catch up to someone. So it's not going to happen. So I do that a lot so that I feel comfortable when I'm in an environment where you might not feel so comfortable if all you've done is the perfect training and the perfect method.
That's why I like our running track round E1.
I was going to mention
there's corners and turning and
corners, hills.
Yeah.
And more specifically at the end of the 500 meter run loop, there's an uphill, which is the last thing you want a lot of the time. But then it's good because I think about that before a race and I'm like, well, at least there's no uphill. Unless until you turn across the line. Yeah.
Well, if you're struggling with that bit, then you're in a world of pain.
Exactly. But yeah, so as far as the topic goes, I am now very much, from a coaching perspective and understanding my own training, I'm very much accepting to a level what my technique is and maximizing it. And again, I think that's because I realized that the chance of me going pro at my age in a conventional sport is so low that there isn't that much point in me learning the perfect technique now. It's now let's maximize what we can get.
I have,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
No.
I mean, we could spend a lot longer talking about it, but
Oh, it's the same with all of our topics.
maybe we shouldn't.
Maybe we shouldn't. If you're still listening, and I didn't throw you away with all the throwing stuff,
Go and practice
you've
throwing
survived.
tennis ball.
Yeah, you've survived for the ROXD quiz.
Oh, yeah.
So, Charles, talk to me about ROXD.
ROXD is and for those of the OGs of the podcast will have heard this many times, ROXD is a training brand, that me and my business partner Hugh, who's coincidentally hiding behind the camera
He actually
today,
is, yeah.
he is. He's got the live show that we started about 6 months ago, and it's kind of formed from our passion of high rocks and competing in the sport of high rocks, hence why we talk about it so much. But it's offering training programs mainly, whether that's inline online training or in-person coaching and training sessions. You mentioned Threshold Friday. We've got a new class, Midweek Madness, which is starting today actually. So basically one-stop shop for all of your fitness racing needs.
Awesome. And there's opportunities to chat to Hugh, chat to Charles. If I'm there on a Threshold Friday, race me. But yeah, it's really cool.
And maybe signed.
But yeah, no, it's awesome to see how you guys are growing it and the community you guys have built. And trust me, it's like a really nicely, organically growing community.
Thank you.
And you bring this quiz section,
I know.
which I have prepared today.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to this.
So Charles messaged me last night and he said,
I can't do anything now.
please, can you make the quiz easier? Because I've not been doing very well. So I thought, yes.
Oh, great.
So question number 1, please do join in along with this. They're multiple choice. And if they're not, have a good guess. First one is multiple choice.
C.
Interesting. 2016,
Okay.
800 meters, 6th position,
Interesting.
competing for Durham University. What time did you run for the 800 meters in 2016 when you finished 6th for Durham University? I've got options here.
Okay. I've got a number in my head already, which is good.
Do you want to tell me what that is first?
No, I want the
Okay.
options.
So you have A, 2:08.41, 2 minutes, 8 seconds,
Yeah.
41 milliseconds. Option B, 2:12.41.
Mm-hmm.
Option C, 2:18.41.
Come on.
And option D, 2:06.4.
Okay. I feel like I want to split the difference and go 2:08.41, but I think it was slower. Have you got where I ran? Was it York?
It was York.
I remember it so vividly. Not a good day for me. I never liked 400 meters anyway.
It was 800 meters.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like that either. Yeah. I'm going to go, I think I ran, I can't be that slow. Let's go for 2:08.41. Was it 2:12?
It was 2:12.
Oh, I had too much faith in myself.
So I thought that
How is anyone listening getting that?
because they get the chance, they get
Oh, they wanted
chance
to
on their
guess.
side.
Okay, fine.
So there's people.
If
out
anyone
there,
actually knew that off the power of 10,
yeah,
I've got
well, drop a
stalker.
comment if you got it right because you know more about Charles than he knows about himself.
I like this. That was good.
And I realized at that point that you could get that right, and I was going to be annoyed that you got it right, and so I didn't want to ask you any more questions that were easy. Or you could get it wrong, and then I would show to you that there's no point in me asking you easy questions, and that's what I've gone for. So
I've got one about myself wrong. I don't want to play this game anymore. From next week, when we next record, we're not doing quizzes anymore.
question 2, David Brown. Oh, this is hard. What is he famous for?
Please tell me this is multiple choice. David Brown.
Okay, I can.
There's probably hundreds of thousands of David
Okay,
Browns in
fine.
the pod.
I'll make it multiple choice.
Okay, thank you.
David Brown. He is famous for being the first person to run the 100 meters under 11 seconds. David Brown, he is B, famous for jumping the furthest in a non-regulation sandpit. Option C, David Brown, is the first person to go professional in more than 5 sports.
Okay.
They're all of your options.
Oh.
I can't be asked to think of any more, which means that it was in those.
So you've made those up on the spot?
Yes, I have.
Okay. No way you've gone off the top of your head a non-regulation sandpit. No way.
So you're going option B.
And I'm like, there's no way he's put it as C because I always go C.
Did I put it as C? I thought it was a bit...
No. You put B. Like you have...
That was B.
Yeah. But you wouldn't have put an option as C.
Okay.
What was A again? 111...
Under 11 seconds.
I'm going to go with my gut and say he's jumped the furthest in a...
Okay. David Brown, class T11, is the first man that's blind to run under 11 seconds in 100 meters.
I was going to ask what class that was. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So,
cool. Do you know when that was?
It was, I believe it was 2016.
And where's he from?
America.
American. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
No, I was never getting that.
3. You're going to want multiple choice again, I reckon. What? Actually, no, you don't get multiple choice with this.
Brilliant.
You have enough multiple choice in your brain. So, in which sport, in the rule book, is groin grabbing illegal?
That's got to be MMA.
Interesting.
I've just gone... Oh, okay, wait.
No, that's fine.
No, I'm going to try and just rationalize it a bit more. The sports that come to mind, rugby, MMA. I've forgotten any other sport in existence.
Okay.
Or, hang on, that sparks something in me. Water-based sports, like water polo.
Okay.
That might be a play here.
Okay.
Except water polo is quite niche. But
I can tell you, in all of the sports you just mentioned, you would get penalised for it. But only one sport has it in the rule book that groin grabbing is illegal.
Oh, I'm going to stick with MMA.
The answer is water polo.
Come on. No, it's not.
It is. I promise you.
Come on.
I was really impressed. I was really rooting for you.
No one was rooting harder than I was.
Okay. This is one I circled as you will probably get right. But I'm also going to offer 2 points for it.
Had you circled any of the other ones that I was going to get right? You thought I'd get the first one right. This is tough.
Okay. John Isner and Nicholas Mahou are famous for having played in the longest tennis match ever. It was at Wimbledon. The sets went as follows: 6-4, 6-3, 6-7, 7-6, and what to finish? Actually, that can't be right because one of them had won. I've got one of those sets in the wrong order. But they were the number of games that they played up to that point.
Yeah.
It went to the 5th set, as you know.
Yeah.
You're going to get a point for who won, and you're going to get another point for what the final score was in the last set.
Tie break.
It wasn't you can't tie break in
the final set.
In the final set.
So you want a number of games.
I want a number of games for each player.
For each player?
So like in the first set it was 6-4.
Yeah.
So I want that.
I think the number is low 20s come to my head.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Who won? John Isner or Nicholas? Okay, so you get a point for that.
Okay.
So you got one right. The score in the final set was 70 to 68.
Shut up.
Yep, it went on for 11 hours.
Where'd I get low 20s from?
I don't know. There's been another game, I think, that has done that, but 70 to 68 went on for 11 hours. I believe it went across 3 days. It definitely went across 2 days.
I remember that was quite recently.
Yeah, I was actually there
Wait.
on the first day that it was going on.
What year was that? 18, 19?
No, I think it was before that. I think it was like 2014 potentially.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, crazy.
That's a big amount of games.
That's a lot.
That's endurance sport.
Surely you're going away that evening and being like, bro, how much is it worth?
Yeah.
Question number 5. What was the X Games former name?
I don't know. And I don't get multiple choice for this.
I can give you a hint. It's not.
I'm deflated, Angus.
Okay, I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. It's not that hard from what it currently is called.
Okay. Which means it's got to be a letter, right? Like
I can't
the
give
Z
more.
Games.
The Z Games.
It's gotta be. Is X Games an improvement on what it was previously called?
According to the marketing team,
Okay.
it was.
According to you.
No, according to the marketing
No,
team.
but according to you, are you saying it's
Oh.
an improvement? Which name do you like better?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is a little bit cooler.
The X Games.
I'd say the other one is a bit like what your dad would call it.
Ooh. It's something like, it must be like Rad Games or like super extreme. Extreme. Ooh. The Extreme Games. The Extreme
Correct.
Games. Come on.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
I love hearing the thought process there. Okay, the final question. There's actually an extra question here because of the
Pumped up
first.
now. I'm pumped up.
Okay, if you get this one,
£1 million.
Deal.
Tax-free cash.
Deal.
Okay, fine.
deal.
Should we shake on that? If you're watching on YouTube.
If you're watching YouTube, we just shook, and I didn't have any fingers crossed. What's the date today?
First.
It is the 1st of April. That's really bad for entertainment reasons. If you're listening to this, it's not the 1st of April. It's we recorded this the day you're listening. So literally a matter of days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, on the 29th of March, 2025, at Thoresby Park, which is just north of Nottingham, there was a championship that took place for a sport. What sport took place?
It's like synonymous with the area. That area is well known for this sport.
Relatively, I would say that it is now as a result of that.
Oh, really? Had you heard of the sport?
I had
£1 million.
£1 million.
I'm based off the geography of the area being Midlands, and I want to go for a niche sport.
Okay.
And I know that there's a niche sport also played in the Midlands, in an area that I know quite well. I'm going lawn bowls.
Okay. It's not lawn bowls, but I like the thinking. It's hobby horsing, which has now been given as a proper sport.
Really?
Do you know what hobby horsing is?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know what hobby horsing is. I don't know the context of the sport or like.
What are you talking about?
You racing?
No. You're show jumping.
Shut up.
So hobby horsing, for those that don't know,
Shut up.
is show jumping for horses. Only the horse is replaced by one of the horse heads on a stick. And yeah.
How high are these people jumping? Horse jump
Not
high?
very high.
Oh, right. If they're jumping like 6 foot, then I'm like, wow.
From what
that
I have
legit
seen,
should be a professional sport.
Again, I think my Instagram algorithm's slightly broken. From what I have seen on my Instagram of how high they jump when they're in training, we're talking like maybe 1.2 meters.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's still not.
Yeah.
But
Holding a wooden stick.
I might be giving them a little bit too much credit there. I don't know.
No, I wouldn't have got that. You're right.
For those that organised the championship, there's 2 things that I would request, which is the first one, you haven't put out on the news of who won. So I was looking for that information.
Yeah.
And secondly, let us know how we can get involved.
Yeah.
I would be up for
Having a
hobby
go.
horsing
Yeah,
competition.
you'd be quite good.
I hope so. I used to be good at high jump when I was younger.
Yeah.
But that concludes the ROX quiz, and you have matched your personal best.
Have I?
You've got 1 question right.
How many episodes is this now? This is the 4th one we've done together? 3rd one? 4th one?
I think it's the 4th.
And my
Might
maximum...
be 5th. Nah, I don't know.
And you haven't totaled up my points accumulatively yet, have I?
Well, I've done 3 quizzes,
Okay.
which means you've probably got 2 or 3 points.
Right. That's not great, is it?
It's not. I'm looking forward to the next one where I get an impossible quiz.
Impossible.
Impossible. I'm hoping you go back and dig deep into my history.
I try my hardest to be analytical with the answers and like justify it, and it just in my head they sound really sensible, but I just
Guys,
clearly not very clever.
I don't often genuinely request you to drop a comment, but it might be worth going to YouTube and putting how many of those you got right,
Please don't.
just so that Charles can see where he needs to improve.
The amount of people who probably got the first one right just by guessing as well.
Comparison is the thief of joy, as we have learned. And I think that
this will really make me grumpy.
Yeah, this will really make him grumpy. And if you appreciate that in the next episode, then you know what to do. You can find it at mindsets_podcast. That goes for the same of all of the social media. You can find ROXD Sport at ROXD_sport.
You bet.
It will be in the description. Same as always. So will Charles and my own personal pages. Feel free to reach out, drop a comment, drop a like, drop a share, put it in your family group chat. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one.
I enjoyed that one.
Apart from the quiz.
Apart from the quiz and apart from the throwing bit that I went down. So if anyone's interested in throwing coaching one-to-one online, then let me know. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys all in the next episode.